I used to believe that families break slowly, like a rope fraying over time. But the day my son asked me to deliver a simple white box, wrapped neatly with a gold ribbon, was the moment everything snapped in one swift, devastating motion. At first glance, it looked harmless, even thoughtful. A box of homemade cookies, he said. Nothing unusual. Yet the way his fingers lingered on the ribbon, the way his eyes avoided mine, hinted at a weight he wasn't ready to explain. My name is Elaine, and for most of my life, my world revolved around my son, Daniel. After losing his father far too young, it was just the two of us navigating grief, hope, and the long road toward becoming whole again. Daniel grew into a man who rarely raised his voice, the kind of son who apologized even when he wasn't wrong. But lately, his smiles looked borrowed, as if he had taken them from someone more certain, someone less afraid. His marriage to Lila, a spirited young woman with a quick laugh and a quicker temper, had always felt fragile. Not broken, just delicate, like a porcelain plate decorated beautifully but prone to cracking under pressure. And pressure had been thick in their home recently, though neither of them acknowledged it openly. I felt it in the canceled dinners, the clipped replies, the way Daniel spoke of her with strained admiration rather than affection. So when he appeared at my door that afternoon, asking me to deliver the box while offering almost no explanation, I sensed something deeper stirring beneath the surface. Still, I agreed. I had spent a lifetime supporting him, and trust is not something you question between a mother and her child. Driving to their house, I rehearsed what I might say to Lila. Simple greetings, harmless small talk. But when she opened the door, her expression tightened the moment she saw the box. Not curiosity, not confusion, something closer to dread. Her eyes darted between the ribbon and my face, as if searching for accusations I hadn't voiced. "He sent this?" she asked, her voice cracking ever so slightly. "Yes," I replied gently. "He said you'd like it." She swallowed hard, barely touching the box before snatching it from my hands with a trembling grip. The air inside the house felt heavy, as if thickened by emotions no one wanted to name. I considered asking if everything was all right, but the rigidness in her posture warned me not to pry. Instead, I offered a quiet goodbye and stepped back toward the porch. Before I reached my car, I heard her whisper something sharp, almost panicked, followed by the sound of a drawer slamming shut. In that instant, I knew this box was not what it claimed to be. And whatever truth it held had already begun unraveling the fragile threads holding their marriage together. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was how that box would soon turn all of us into strangers standing on the edge of a life none of us recognized. The silence in my house that evening felt different, dense, almost watchful. I kept replaying the way Lila had snatched the box from my hands, how her breath had hitched, how her eyes had flared with something far more potent than surprise. Fear. That was the word I had been searching for. She had looked afraid, not of me, but of whatever she believed was inside that box. Daniel hadn't called after I delivered it, and that absence pressed against me like a warning. He usually checked in even for the smallest things. His quietness now created a dull ache beneath my ribs, the kind that grows heavier with every unanswered hour. By the next morning, the ache had sharpened into worry. I found myself pacing the kitchen, touching the edges of my countertop the same way I used to when Daniel was a child and stayed out past curfew. Only this time, he wasn't a boy testing boundaries. He was a man withdrawing into a world he didn't want me to see. I finally called him. His voice sounded strained, as if he had been holding tension in his throat all night. "Mom, I'm dealing with something. I'll explain later." His hesitation held 1,000 unspoken truths. "Is it about the box?" I asked quietly. There was a pause. A long, telling pause. "Mom," he said finally, "please don't ask questions right now." It stung more than I expected. I had always been the one Daniel confided in, the first person he sought when life hurt or confused him. Now, suddenly, he was building walls, shutting doors, asking me to stay on the other side. And I didn't know if he was protecting himself, protecting me, or hiding something he wasn't ready to face. By noon, I couldn't shake the feeling that the box had cracked open something dangerous. It wasn't curiosity that pressed against me, it was instinct. Nurses rely on instinct. It has saved more lives than any medication. And mine told me that whatever Daniel was dealing with wasn't simply marital tension. The uneasy quiet ended abruptly when my phone rang again, not from Daniel, but from Lila. Her voice trembled with a thin layer of anger. "We need to talk," she said. "Now." I drove to their house again, each turn tightening the knot in my stomach. When she opened the door this time, her eyes were swollen, and the box, its once pristine ribbon torn, sat on the coffee table like an accusation. "Why did he give this to you to deliver?" she demanded, her voice a brittle whisper. "I don't know," I replied truthfully. "He didn't explain." She laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Of course he didn't." Her hands shook violently as she picked up the box. "He's starting something he doesn't understand." I frowned. "Lila, what was in it?" Her gaze snapped up, something fierce and fragile flickering in her eyes. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer, lowering her voice. "If he keeps digging," she murmured, "none of us are going to come out of this clean." Her words lingered in the air, chilling, cryptic, and unmistakably threatening. And that was when I realized the truth wasn't only painful, it was dangerous. Daniel finally called that evening, though his voice carried the weight of someone balancing between confession and collapse. He asked me to meet him at a small cafe far from his neighborhood, an unusual choice that immediately sharpened my concern. When he arrived, he moved with the tension of a man holding secrets like broken glass in his hands, afraid any wrong motion might cut too deep. "Mom," he said quietly as he sat down, "I didn't want you involved in this." The words stung, but the pain was overshadowed by the trembling in his fingers. "Daniel," I said, forcing calm into my tone, "you asked me to deliver that box. I didn't involve myself. You brought me in." He lowered his eyes, exhaling slowly. "I know. I didn't expect her to open it in front of you." The cafe's soft murmur seemed to fade until only his voice remained. "Then tell me," I urged gently, "what was in it?" He hesitated, his jaw tightening. "Evidence," he said finally. "Things I found. Things I wasn't supposed to see." He swallowed hard, his gaze flicking toward the window as if expecting someone to be listening. "Lila's been leaving the house every day at noon. She said it was yoga or errands. But I followed her twice. She was meeting someone. A man." My stomach tightened. It wasn't suspicion now, it was confirmation. "Did you confront her?" "No," he replied, shaking his head. "Not yet. I didn't have enough proof. So I collected what I could, bank transfers, messages, photos. That's what was in the box." A cold heaviness settled on my chest. "Daniel, why didn't you tell me?" He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Because I still hoped I was wrong. And because I knew once I said it out loud, everything would change." I watched him struggle to breathe under the weight of betrayal, and suddenly the earlier moments, the evasiveness, the tension, the sudden distance, made devastating sense. Before I could comfort him, the cafe door opened, and Lila walked in. Her eyes locked on Daniel with chilling precision, then shifted to me with unmistakable hostility. "So this is where you ran off to," she said, stepping closer. "Having private meetings with your mother now?" Daniel stiffened. "Lila, this isn't." "Oh, don't bother," she snapped. "I know exactly what this is." She turned her glare toward me. "You're trying to turn him against me." I inhaled sharply. "Lila, this isn't about me." "Isn't it?" Her voice rose, sharp enough to draw the attention of nearby tables. "You delivered that box. You handed him the match and then watched him burn everything down." Daniel stood abruptly. "Stop. Mom didn't do anything." But Lila's expression only hardened. "You have no idea what you're inviting into this marriage," she whispered, leaning closer. "No idea what you've already set in motion." The threat in her voice wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. And when she turned and stormed out, Daniel didn't chase her. He simply sank back into his chair, defeated. "We're past the point of pretending," he murmured. And that's when I realized. Whatever came next would expose more than infidelity. It would unravel everything we thought we knew. Daniel didn't go home that night. Instead, he came back to my house, carrying the same white box I had delivered just a day earlier. Only now it looked heavier, not because anything inside had changed, but because he finally understood the weight of what it held. He placed it gently on my dining table, almost reverently, as if afraid of what might spill out once it was opened again. "I think you deserve to know," he said quietly. "You got dragged into this without meaning to." I didn't speak. I simply nodded, and he untied the ribbon with slow, deliberate movements. Inside were several envelopes, each meticulously labeled in his handwriting: bank records, messages, photos, meeting times. The organization itself told a story. He had carried this suspicion far longer than he had admitted. He picked up the envelope marked bank records first. "She's been transferring money for months," he murmured. "Small amounts at first, then larger ones. All to the same account. And the man she meets?" "Yes." His voice tightened. "His name is Anthony. I don't know everything yet, but they're connected. That part is clear." A pressure settled behind my sternum, sympathy mixed with disbelief. Daniel had always chosen to see the best in people. The idea that someone had exploited that goodness, used it for deceit, scraped at something raw inside me. He opened the photos next. Each picture showed Lila leaving at noon, meeting the same man in different locations: a cafe, a parking lot, the entrance to a small apartment building. None of the photos were explicit, but the intimacy in their proximity was undeniable. The kind of closeness that didn't belong in a marriage. Daniel's voice broke slightly. I kept telling myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe he was a coworker. Maybe she was helping someone. But then I saw the texts. He handed me his phone, screen glowing with the thread he had forwarded to himself. The words were short, clipped, familiar in the way shared secrets always were. Can't keep waiting, one message read. He won't suspect a thing, another said. Just finish what we agreed. Then we leave. A chill slid down my spine. This wasn't impulsive betrayal. This was orchestration. Planning. Intention. She wasn't just cheating, Daniel whispered, his hands trembling. She was preparing to drain everything. My savings. My investments. She told him once I was too trusting to notice. I felt something harden inside me. Anger, yes, but also a fierce protectiveness. My son, who had lost so much already, was now confronting the realization that the woman he loved had built their life together on lies. What are you going to do? I asked softly. He exhaled, slow and controlled, as if choosing every breath with care. I need to confront her, he said. But not alone. Not anymore. A quiet resolve filled the room. The evidence was no longer just proof. It was clarity, final and unforgiving. Before I could respond, a loud knock echoed through the house. Daniel froze. I did too. The knock came again. And this time a voice followed, sharp, unmistakable, and trembling with fury. Open the door, Lila said. We need to finish this. Morning light spilled through the thin curtains, tinting the room in a soft gold that contrasted sharply with the tension lingering between them. Elena stood beside the small oak table, her fingers tracing its scratches as if searching for answers carved into the wood. Across the room, Daniel leaned against the doorway, his posture rigid, his eyes shadowed by a sleepless night. Neither spoke at first. Silence had become their uninvited mediator. The discovery from the night before still hung between them like smoke. Heavy, choking, impossible to ignore. Elena replayed the moment in her mind. The envelope left on her doorstep, the photograph tucked inside, and the unmistakable truth it revealed. Someone had been watching them. Someone knew more than they should. Daniel cleared his throat, a sound too deliberate to be casual. We need to talk about what you found, he said, stepping forward. His voice was controlled, but Elena sensed the strain beneath it. She lifted her gaze, steady but wary. I know, she replied, but I need to hear it from you first. Why would someone go through so much trouble to follow us? What exactly are we mixed up in? Daniel hesitated. He had always been the one who carried burdens alone, believing silence was a form of protection. But Elena was no longer willing to accept half-truths, not after last night. He finally exhaled, the breath long and heavy. This isn't new, he confessed. I think it's connected to what happened before we left the city. I wasn't honest with you then. Her heart tightened, a cold pressure spreading through her chest. She stepped closer, searching his face for a trace of the man she trusted. You told me everything was finished. I told you what I hoped was true, he said quietly. But someone out there wants me back in the middle of it. And they know the easiest way to reach me is through you. A small tremor passed through her, but she didn't step away. If anything, the confession only sharpened her resolve. Then we face it together, she said, her voice firmer than she felt. No more secrets. Not from me. Daniel's eyes softened with a mixture of relief and regret. He nodded, though the tension in his shoulders remained. There's more, he admitted. The photograph, it wasn't just a warning. It's a message. And I think I know who sent it. Before he could continue, a sharp knock echoed from the front door. Both froze, their eyes meeting in a single loaded second. The sound came again, 2 hard raps, deliberate and impatient. Elena swallowed, her pulse quickening. Are you expecting someone? No, he whispered. The knock came a 3rd time. Elena and Daniel exchanged a final look, one filled with fear, determination, and a silent agreement. Whatever stood on the other side of that door was about to change everything. And neither of them was ready, but they had no choice except to open it.